This is episode 91 of The Variety Artist. This is John Abrams, your host and that guy that interviews successful variety artists from around the world. Brian Daniel South is most famous for his company Creative Magic. In this episode, you'll learn all about it. How did he start? How did he create each product? Why did he create each product? What was his incredible exit strategy and why was it so successful? Then you'll learn how Brian discovered a brand new passion with Discover Magic, how he partnered with Michael Ammar to create an internationally recognized one-of-a-kind program that boosts self-confidence, builds communication skills, and helps kids make new friends. Brian is a brilliant innovator and entrepreneur. I learned a lot. I hope you do too. Enjoy!
Fun fact number 329. John's first job was selling sandbirds at the Orange County Fair.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
My guest today is an entrepreneur and businessman. He had a company called Creative Magic, which he sold in 2011. You may have heard of that. He's consulted with Magic Magazine and Magic Live. He now spends his time following his passions with Discover Magic, whose mission is empowering kids by teaching them the art of magic. Variety artists, I give you Brian.
Yay! Hey, that was a good intro. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. You have so many different things going on. Creative Magic and Discover Magic.
I'm not even sure what we're going to talk about, so I'm excited as well. This is going to be fun.
Well, we're going to talk about both of those things. But before we talk about that, I understand you were a full-time performer before you created your companies?
Yeah, so I mean, and that's how Creative Magic started. Is I was creating tricks for my own performances. So I started performing in 2002. Typical rise of doing school assembly shows, birthday parties, fairs, festivals. I had aspirations of being the next David Copperfield, right? Who doesn't?
Yeah.
At one point, I was talking to a mentor friend of mine who was giving me some advice. I wanted to do cruise ships. That was kind of my goal. And he gave me some really good advice. He said, only do cruise ships if that's your end game, if that's where you want to end up.
Right.
Because you go on a cruise ship and you're doing one, maybe two shows a week. And that's kind of, no one sees you. You don't really get to push your career forward. Based on that advice, I went and took a job at Busch Gardens. And so I worked at Busch Gardens, did 6 shows a day.
Wow.
For a summer, and learned a lot, had a lot of good exposure. And during that process, was able to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my magic career. And went full-time magic after that. I got my degree in marketing, finished my degree, but never got a job.
Were you doing big illusion shows? Were you doing stand-up parlor type shows? What type of Busch Gardens sounds big?
Yeah, so Busch Gardens, I was doing what I would call a mid-sized show. I didn't do any of the big illusions. I kept wanting to add big illusions. I had an audience, generally an audience of 250 to 400 people. So people would call it a club show or a parlor show or whatever, bottles and ropes and newspapers and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Then it turned into illusion. So I decided this is what I want to do. And I started to I bought a fire cage. I bought a mini cube Zag and the classics, the sub trunk and you name it. And I was just doing the standard stuff. And then I bought a shadow box. The combination of buying that fire cage and the shadow box changed the trajectory of my life, in that I bought this fire cage and it didn't come with any instructions. And I put my wife in there and I lit the thing on fire and it caught on fire. And the curtain actually caught on fire. And I had a fire marshal come over to inspect it. And he's like, yeah, this is not built right. And so I called the builder and he wailed on me and said, well, you're a magician. You should know how a fire cage works. It shouldn't have to have instructions. How would you not know to do this? And I'm like, I'm sorry. I bought it because I didn't know. So anyhow, the combination of no instructions and then the customer service that he just wailed on me, it just shocked me. And so then I bought from a less known builder, I bought a shadow box, and that didn't go so well. And so I decided I'd build my own shadow box. And that was the beginning of the end. I invented the shadow tent.
Oh.
In the process of going, there's got to be a better way. And this big heavy box that just cast shadows. And so designed the shadow tent and started to design other things, not meaning to sell it to other people, but to improve my show. Because I hated setting up and taking down. I loved performing.
Those illusions are giant and
Right.
heavy. And I worked for a magician for years and years and years. And I was the one, pushing and pulling all the boxes on and off the stage.
Yeah.
And before I was 30 years old, I had a double hernia surgery.
And you're probably not alone. And the problem is it's the setting them up. We had a trailer, but we couldn't keep props assembled. And that was one of the perks of like the mini cube zag. It packs down really small. It's brilliant. I love the mini cube zag, but if we pack it all the way down, it takes a good 10 minutes to assemble. And so my wife and I would literally play rock, paper, scissors and beg and bribe each other to not have to be the ones to set it up and take it down. Times 5 when you have a lot of these props. So long story short, we invented this prop. So we decided, we'd get some feedback from other magicians. I was showing it to a guy and he said, I want to buy one.
Oh.
And the light bulb went off, the entrepreneur in me. I mean, I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneur bug and went, wait a second, as a performer, I only make money when I'm on stage.
That's right.
And suddenly if I'm selling these on the side, I can be making some money, recoup the investment. We put a lot of money into the R&D of it. So it seemed like a no-brainer. I took out an ad in one of the magazines and then went and talked to Matt King down in Las Vegas, hoping to just get an endorsement from him to say this is a quality prop. And in the process, he bought one and put it in his show, and that completely validated what we were doing. And we sold over time. I don't think I've ever released this number, but
here you go.
Over time, we sold over 800 shadow tints.
Wow.
The reason I haven't ever shared that number is because people underestimate how big the market is. And so when most illusion builders sell 10 or 12 of something and that's it. The good stuff, if you ask Kevin James how many Boloramas he's sold, suddenly you get into another hemisphere of numbers.
That's the same with this podcast. When I first started doing it, a number of people I talked to said, oh, well, there aren't that many variety artists in the United States and all over the world. And I'm like, hold on a minute.
No, there's a ton. And when you go around the world, and that's the majority of the shadow tints are overseas. And we sold so many in the Asian markets. And then there's just a lot of magicians around the world. And so we sold over 2,000 sets of victory cubes.
And by the way, one of them to me.
Ah, beautiful. and it's just great. It met a need, and that's the long and the short of it. And when it comes to business, you solve a problem, you meet a need, and you understand what your customer wants, right? And so the beautiful thing about creative magic was I was my target market. And so in everything I did, we'd send out birthday cards and Christmas gifts and things like that to our customers because that's what I wanted. And so I literally took that experience with the fire cage and just flipped it on its head and said, we're going to not only provide amazing instructions with color instructions with thorough tips and ideas, because that fire cage, the first time I performed it, I practiced and practiced and practiced it, but I never practiced this is my fault, but I never practiced wheeling it out onto the stage. And so one of the first times I performed it, it was in this big festival amphitheater. There's probably 2,000 people. I wheel out this fire cage, and unbeknownst to me, the cloth is just long enough that it can get stuck under one of the wheels. And so when I go to do my dramatic whip the cloth away, it's stuck under a wheel, and I have to pull it real hard, and I just look like a klutz. And you go, that would have been a beautiful little tip to offer. If not improve it by just cutting the cloth 2 inches shorter, but to say, hey, practice wheeling it out and wheeling it back and make sure the cloth's not under one of the wheels. And so all of our tricks came with tips and handling ideas from people who used it. At the end, we're all in this together. And I feel like it could have been so easy to say, here are some tips from some of the other customers. Because the reason I'm not saying this person's name is they're actually a well-known builder.
They're probably listening to this right now.
And I hope so.
They'll be like, oh, it's Brian. Oh, yeah. All right.
Anyhow, I digress. We don't need to be talking.
Yes, we don't need to get into that. And by the way, I've used a bunch of your products, including, of course, the Victory Cubes I already confessed to. But I also use the bigger wands.
Ah, yes.
And I got to tell you, when I first read the ad on bigger wands, I was like, yeah, it'll probably be kind of cool. And then I put it in my show, and it probably gets the biggest response of any other trick that I do.
So I'll tell you the bigger wand story. So we did the shadow tint. We were manufacturing victory cubes, and those were made in China. The shadow tint was made in the U.S. The victory cubes were taking longer to produce than we thought they would. And so we said, well, we'll just fill in the blanks here. We don't want too long to go before we release our next trick. And again, I had created a bunch of stuff for myself. Bigger wands I'd been doing for solid 10 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it killed. So I'm like, I'll have 100 sets or so made. I think in the end, I only made like 40 sets by a local seamstress here in my hometown. And I showed it to a big name magician that sells a lot of kids props.
Yeah.
And I said, what should I price this at? And he said, we shouldn't sell it. It's not worth anything. I said, no, this is gold. And he's like, no, you won't sell it. It doesn't do anything. If it like changed colors or the wands appeared, well, then you've got a magic trick. But it doesn't do anything magic. Why would anyone buy this?
That is exactly what I thought when I looked at it.
Right. And so obviously people weren't alone. So I trusted him. I was new to all this. And so I said, okay, he knows better than I do. So I had a very small mailing list at the time from just people that had expressed interest in the shadow tent. And so I just blasted out there. I said, hey, we were going to release this product, but we changed our mind. So I have a limited number of these. If you want them, they're $85. Oh. And they sold out in under 10 minutes. We sold all, like I said, I think it was 40 sets or something like that. And I went, you know what? Maybe this guy's wrong.
Yeah, maybe I underpriced it a little bit.
And so luckily I went back and said, okay, the retail price is going to be $145, and we took pre-orders and we pre-sold a couple hundred of them. And the nice thing about bigger one, in the end, we sold thousands and thousands, and I can't even count. And we ended up having those made in China 1,000 at a time, and we went back so many times for more. The bottom line was, when a magician saw another magician perform it, I sold 3 more sets, right? Like that's right. Guys would see it. So a lot of times people didn't get it from the ads, but then when they would see it in action, they'd go, oh, any idiot can get 5 minutes of gold out of kids, right?
That's
like that's right. It doesn't matter. And honestly, I'm not a great kids performer, and that's why I came up with that routine, is because I have no business being in front of kids, but that was my crutch. Is you go, how's that not funny? And then we later introduced the 12-foot wand, and I made the same mistake that all my customers made. When customers would come to me and say, I want a bigger wand, and I'd tell them, we don't need a bigger one. 8 foot is plenty funny. Over time, I feel like at least 100 people have asked me for a bigger wand. Maybe I should just do it. And it was purely a money move at that point. I'm like, if they'll buy it, I'll sell it to them. And I really didn't think it was a good idea. And I had this 12-foot inflatable made.
Yep.
And it came in, and I went, I should probably use it because I was my target market for 95% of what I did. It was what I want. In this case, it was what do my customers want. And so I threw it in the show, and I was so embarrassed by it. I'm like, of course it's funny. Right?
Of course it's killed. It's a giant magic wand.
It's a 12-foot wand. And so I've always wanted to and never did, but the plan was to do one more bigger wand that was just the tip of a magic wand. I think someone should do this. Just build out of those laundry hamper spring open tubes.
Yeah.
Just build, the first 6 feet of a giant tip of a wand.
What looks like a 100-foot wand, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And you start to bring it from off stage, and just as a callback gag, you end with the 12-foot wand, move on with your show, and then later on something doesn't go right, and you go, well, you know what we need? And the kids, a bigger one, and you walk off, and no, I'm just kidding. We need X. I think it'd be hilarious, but I don't perform anymore, so I never had the chance to do it. But if I were still performing, I promise you I would have the tip of a giant wand.
I think after saying that, you're going to see that in the next
I hope so.
month or two.
I hope so. And please send me pictures and videos. I would love it. Nothing would make me happier than to someone do that.
Now, so in 2011, you sold Creative Magic.
In the end, we sold Creative Magic to our customers. And so we did it in a very different way. We had offers from Murphy's and a few other companies to buy out all of our inventory. In the end, nothing felt right, except for I loved my customers. I loved Creative Magic. We miss it. We go to conventions, and we see customers, and we talk to people. I love that. And people said, why did you sell out? Were you not making money? No, we were in our prime. Creative Magic was doing great. I just got to a point where I checked box most everything I wanted to do in my life. And I go, I could do this forever. And I looked at other guys who did. They go to 10 to 20 magic conventions a year. They sit behind a booth, and they're constantly trying to come up with the next great magic trick. And it's a lot of stress coming up. When people come to me and say, I have an idea for a magic trick, what do you recommend I do? I say, sit on it. Because the last thing I tell a friend to do is put a magic trick on the market, because you make yourself incredibly vulnerable to criticism of that trick already existed. You knocked off so-and-so. And as original as I like to think my stuff was, every single product I put out there, I took heat for stealing something for someone else.
Oh, wow.
The change cap, nothing like it had been done. And I got sued over it by someone who actually knocked me off and created a way inferior magic hat. But it's just drama. It's a lot of drama. If you're going to have success, if you're only going to sell 50 to 100 or something, that's fine. But if you start selling things by the thousands, you don't have that kind of success without people coming after you. And to this day, not a week goes by that I don't get multiple correspondences of people asking me for instructions. I just bought this on eBay. Do you still have the instructions? I can't find my DVD. Can you send me another one? And 2011, I haven't done this for almost a decade, and people still ask me for advice, and I'm okay with that. But I don't think a lot of people realize that you sell a prop, and these people will come after you 20 years later and say, how did you do this? And so it's a long-term game. It's not a way to make quick money. When you're used to doing a show, making $1,000 and then moving on, those people never come back to you unless they want to give you more money. So anyhow, so that's why we decided to get out. We saw the writing on the wall. Our workload was just going to increase, and we kind of achieved everything. And we realized there was no exit strategy. We were a pretty big company.
Yeah.
And who's going to buy us? And we had a lot of inventory. So that's what we did. We were too expensive for any small company to buy us. And even the big companies couldn't afford to get us what we got by selling out in a creative way. So it was a beautiful exit. We loved it. We had so much fun. So we sold it in portions. People could buy a piece of history, and with it, they got a piece of Matt King's original shadow tent.
Wow.
And they got over $10,000 worth of product, at least one of everything guaranteed.
Yeah.
And we sent out mystery boxes. We were kind of on the cutting edge of these like tinker boxes. And now everyone loves the idea of buying toys. I think it's an indicator of our society that we have everything we want, that we buy things that we don't know those mystery bags and mystery boxes, and they're really hot now. But we did that back in 2011 of every box is going to show up and you have no idea what's going to be in it.
I remember when you did that. Yeah, I was very excited. But I looked in my inventory and I was like, oh, I already have
everything. Yeah.
So if I get a mystery box, it'd be like, oh, I got this, I got this, I got this.
But it worked out. It took 3 days to process all the orders. Rebecca was on the phone nonstop, and then we sold out all the portions that we could. We ran out of product, so it was fun. It was a great. It was one of the greatest things I've ever done, and I've been asked by Ivy League schools. Harvard wanted me to come and speak on our exit strategy because it was so unique, and I said, it was so unique, it just really doesn't have any value to anyone else. This is not duplicate. If I had that as my exit strategy when I started Creative Magic, I would have been a genius, but I fell backwards into it. The big thing was I did talk to other creators and said, what are the negatives of this? And the number one negative, if you are thinking about creating a magic trick and selling it, again, don't.
But if you do,
the number one thing that happens that people don't realize is they'll generally do a small run, 100, 200, sometimes as small as 50, depending on what type of product it is. And inevitably you'll have these sources. You go, okay, I get my little light bulb from here, and I get my string from here, and I get my wire from here, and I create this thing. And then the light bulb company switches the bulb. And then suddenly you go, okay, well, now I have to switch the string, and I have to switch, and the price goes up. And so what happens is you'll have an initial rush of orders, and it all makes sense. And you sell 100, 150 of them, whatever. And then you run out of inventory, and then someone places an order, and then you're stuck. And you go, do I buy 50 more of everything, and now it's changed and I have to reinvent it? And so I talk to so many people that say, well, you just have to retire that trick and move on to another one, because it never makes sense to reorder more.
Wow.
Out the gate, that was my goal. So with our first order of shadow tints, we ordered 100 shadow tints, thinking that'll meet the need. And I got my costs way down. I'll sell 100 shadow tints. That'll be great. And then of course we blew through those pretty quick. And so I went back and ordered another 100 and then started ordering them 300 at a time. And one time even ordered 1,000 of them all at the same time to get the price down.
I'll bet any manufacturer listening to this is going, gosh, I wish I had those problems.
Well, and that's when we ordered change caps. We ordered 5,000 of them, going, surely that'll be enough. And it wasn't. Before we knew it, we had to order another 10,000 caps. But most of our products, when we ordered victory cubes, I ordered 2,000 of them. And that was enough. And so that's where we ended up in where we had a lot of inventory left over that we could do that whole portion deal.
So did a lot of those mystery boxes have victory cubes in them?
Yeah. So everyone that got one of those, I think they ended up with 3 to 4 victory cubes, and that was, so, but they were guaranteed one of everything. At one point, we had over $2 million worth of inventory.
Wow.
in storage, because that was my MO. But my production costs were ridiculously low at that point. It was just, I was playing a totally different game than most magic manufacturers were playing. And we realized at the rate we were selling everything, we went, our great grandkids could still be doing this, and I don't want them to do it. And so I had other ambitions of, I had this idea of Teach by Magic, which evolved into Discover Magic. The end game was I wanted to be able to work less and do more things. At the end of the day, I like to create. I like to build, and the building up the creative magic was a lot more fun than maintaining creative magic.
Oh, I see. Well, as long as we're talking about Discover Magic, what is Discover Magic? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so this is what I'm doing now, and if you haven't heard of it, go to discovermagic.com. It's a project that was started by Michael Ammar. He came to me in 2014, the end of the year, and said, I have this idea of creating a magic curriculum unlike any other magic curriculum that has ever been offered, and that most people offer a magic program and then they say, and as a benefit, your kid's going to learn hand-eye coordination and communication skills, and it's going to build their self-confidence, and all these things are kind of byproducts of learning magic. And so in this case, he said, what if we began with that as the purpose, and we wrapped the magic around it? And so it's really a life skills course where kids learn to be prepared, they learn to be respectful, they learn to be creative, they learn to be authentic. In the process of learning these things, they're having a lot of fun. They think that they're learning the importance of eye contact because it's a form of misdirection, but they're really learning that eye contact is a way to show respect. It's brilliant. And he showed me, he's been working on it for 20 years. He showed me files and files of content, and I fell in love with it. The idea originally was for older kids, and it had a lot of pretty intense stuff, Ammar quality stuff. I came to the conclusion that the demographic that we needed to hit was a younger demographic.
Yeah, by the way, people that are listening to this that are not magicians, Michael Ammar, he's one of the kings of magic. I mean, he can present magic like nobody can.
If you ask 100 magicians who's the greatest teacher of magic, right? Ammar will be on their list.
Yeah.
But the idea of teaching older kids felt like a small market. And as I did my research, the idea was that most parents have kind of given up on their kids by the time they turned 14. And they go, okay, you're baked, and they don't spend as much money in putting them in extracurricular after school things. They're kind of on their own, doing their own thing. But 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, mom and dad spend a lot of money on piano and guitar and swim lessons and karate. And they go, if we can tap that market and convince a mom to sign their kid up for a magic class instead of a karate class. The model changed quite a bit in that the props are very kid friendly. We brought in a third person in Michael Rosander. He's brilliant, and he's a full-time actor and performer, and runs a successful magic camp. He runs about 300 kids a summer through his magic camp. And so the three of us created this curriculum that is super high quality, super fun and colorful. And it's Carmen Sandiego. You get these top secret file folders. And, and every trick has a fun story to it. But they're simple tricks that build kids' confidence and builds their communication skills. And that's our goal, is in a world where kids are dealing with increased anxiety and depression, and I attribute most of that to social media. Yeah. Kids are looking down at their cell phones, and they're worried about how many people liked the burrito picture they just posted. It's just a different world that we're not used to. We're not ready for the side effects of this technology that we've handed to all these kids. Magic is a great way to counteract that, in that magic is an empathetic art. So when you're performing magic, you have to know what your audience is thinking, feeling, and perceiving.
That's right.
Unlike most, you can play the guitar, and if your audience tunes out, it's fine, right? Doesn't change your presentation. But as a performer of magic, and I assume some of the allied arts, I imagine there's others out there that relate as well, but magic especially, you say pick a card, and if they don't understand that instruction, the trick stops, right? And you have to go back up and repeat the instruction. It's a great way. Kids love magic because of Harry Potter and whatever. They're excited to learn magic, and parents are excited that they're doing something that gets them to put their devices down and think about others.
That's awesome. Instead of having one camp, you have multiple camps going on all over the place, right?
Yeah, so it's a license model. We create the curriculum. I teach a few of the classes, and of course, Rose Sanders still teaches his summer camps and things like that. And we do that just for experience and research. But the business is that we sell the curriculum to others. So your listeners, if they're interested in learning more, they can become a licensed presenter. And in fact, in January, we're going to be doing a special promotion. We'll add another wave of presenters. So we did this when we launched the first. We only had 52 spots, and those filled up real quick. And we only sold 52 licenses, and then we've had a couple waves since where we bring in new. So in January we'll be doing another wave, a special wave of new licenses. And so if anyone's interested in doing it, it's a business, back to what we're talking about, where you can make money without leaving your house. You can hire instructors. So that's our goal. We have a couple of our licensees now that are teaching 500 plus kids a year. And obviously they're not the ones teaching them. They manage a team of instructors. And so whether it's summer camps, after school programs, working with parks and recs, there's tons of ways to promote this with like the Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs. So you go where the kids are and you offer the class, and then we provide all the lesson plans, all the videos. It's unlike any other program, and where every single trick, there's a video as well where the kids log into a video vault. And so if a kid misses a class, you don't have to waste time catching them up. You just give them the secret word and they go into their video vault, type in that secret word, and they're back up to speed with everyone else. It's some really, really neat stuff. It really is unlike anything else that's been offered out there. We're very proud of it.
The people who've taken advantage of this, people like Ken Scott, Joe Romano, Louis Mayer, Tim Sunfelt, Michael Ammar, of course. But yeah. I looked on your website and I was like, these are all big names in magic. These are people who listen to this podcast, and these are people who have a lot of experience performing.
Yeah, no, and there's several guys that used to be Ronalds. I guess that's kind of, they don't generally tell you that they're Ronalds. That was a whole top secret thing. But when McDonald's killed off the Ronald program, a lot of those guys came in. And so like Dal Sanders was an incredibly successful Ronald, and he has turned that into this. He's doing this almost full time now. I mean, he's killing it. He's having so much success.
I got to ask him about that. I'm interviewing him in 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, I have a Ronald McDonald story. You want to hear my Ronald McDonald story?
Yeah.
Okay. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I was dating a girl. We split up, whatever. 20 years later, I talked to her. We talked on Facebook, and I said, "So what are you doing? You have kids? You have a husband? What's going on?" And she says, "Well, I have a husband, but I can't tell you what he does." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's got to be a secret agent, or he's got to work for the government or something. So a few years later, I talked to her and she said, well, he was a Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
She couldn't tell me. It was
super secretive. So the Ronalds bought, I became friends with Dal because he was not just a Ronald. He was one of the Ronald, I don't know, puppet masters. I don't know what they call him, but yeah. He wrote the shows, and I'm sure he'll talk about that. He's great. But I got invited to go to one of the Ronald conferences, but of course they don't call him that. They have like code names for him. The hotel doesn't know that it's a bunch of Ronalds. It was crazy, top secret stuff. I mean, I did a show for Raytheon. They make all the military stuff. Super, like I had to sign a lot of things going into doing that show. Yeah. But doing the Ronald stuff was more secretive than doing the Raytheon show. I felt like it was crazy how top secret it was.
It is crazy, yeah.
It was fun. They're a good group. So anyhow, the Discover Magic is a growing thing. We've been doing it for about 4 years. We're learning that the skills that make a successful Discover Magic licensee are not being a great performer. That it's more of having business skills and people skills. So if you've got a listener here that's a variety artist that doesn't necessarily excel in magic, the magic's the easy part. It's about working with your community and having gumption. That's the number one quality I look for. And I'll talk to people, and I'll often talk people out of joining. It's not a plug and play, just do this and you will have success. It's not like a snow cone shop. You just set it up and your customers will come. You need to contact people and find a location. And I liken it to an airplane. It takes a lot of fuel to get it off the ground, but once you do, you're set for life, right? It'll just coast. And so if you're willing to put in a year or two of some hard work, pounding the pavement and finding the right locations and spreading the word, because we are educating the marketplace that magic is an option. Whereas moms and dads know piano, know karate, know swim, but they don't think about magic. And so there's a little bit of having to educate them. But when you set the materials down in front of them, they see the top secret file folders, and you show them a trick, and you tell them we're teaching kids to be respectful and prepared and confident and creative and authentic and giving, it's such an easy sell. It's so much fun.
Okay, we're going to move on to fact or something John just made up. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Is it fact? Or is it something John just made up?
Okay, and in full disclosure, I did not make up any of these.
Oh, I didn't realize that's true. I was supposed to let you make some up, huh?
That's okay. Some of these are true and some of these are not.
Does John made them up or Brian made them up? That's what.
Yeah, I don't know which is which. So we're going to call this fact or something Brian just made up. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say a headline. You can tell me whether it's true or not. And if it is true, tell me a little more about it. Okay, here we go. First headline. Brian broke his leg on an American Ninja course.
It's a fact. I did. It is. It's true. Now here's the thing. It wasn't like I wasn't on the TV show, but this American Ninja course came to town, and it was a classic thing where you run around and whatnot. And I just forgot I was old and started jumping around on this American Ninja course. There's this section where you're jumping really, really far, and I was just jumping way too far. My body shouldn't have jumped that far. And I landed, and my leg just snapped. I'd never broke a bone in my life, and I shattered my leg in 6 different places, shattered my ankle. Interesting side story. I was supposed to be going to the Capitol Convention Conference the very next day to launch a little project we called Shoebox Magic, which we still hope to do at some point, but it's on hold because of Discover Magic. I mean, that moment changed the trajectory of my life. If I'd gone to Capitol Convention the next day, I would have done Shoebox, and it would have slowed down Discover. And it's a whole different thing. But
interesting.
It was funny because in that moment, that's all, I wasn't in pain. In fact, I heard my leg snap. And then when the ER, the ambulance came and was examining me, I was in such shock that I wasn't sure. I'm like, well, maybe I just sprained it. And, my ankles literally popped out about 2 inches, but they popped it back in. And I was like, oh, maybe I can go. But during that time, all I thought was, maybe I could go. No, I probably shouldn't go. And then I went to the ER and they x-rayed me, and they like, oh no, this is shattered.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere.
You should probably fire the people the paramedic that came and examined me, because he should have been able to feel it and go, yeah, this is broken. But he's like, I don't know, I'd go to the ER if I were you.
Dang.
Total fact. It's the most adventurous thing I've ever done. But you know that there's a saying that the last kid around the track is the first kid to pick up a magic kit. That's me. I never played sports. I never did basketball or anything like that. And this was one lapse of judgment of like, oh yeah, I'm a magician for a reason.
That's why.
I'm not supposed to be on an American Ninja course. So never again.
Next headline. Brian had a volunteer confess to cheating on his wife from the stage during one of his shows.
Now that's just crazy, right?
That's totally crazy.
But you don't make that kind of stuff up. It totally happened. It's fact.
Really?
Yeah. I was doing a show in Park City with an open bar, and everyone was plastered, and I had a lot of audience participation in my show, and I'm just dreading who am I going to pull up because everyone's drunk and I need someone sober for this trick. And long story short, I was doing a mentalism trick, and I always had this joke about a person's name. I'm saying, well, you're thinking of a person, Jennifer. I keep getting Jennifer. Who's Jennifer? And it, ha ha ha, and we move on. Uh-oh. And apparently I nailed his girlfriend's name, and he turns to his wife and he's, I'm so sorry, honey. And I'm like, and I said, no, I'm kidding. I don't really read minds. I've just made that up. And then he goes like this, he puts his hands on his head. He's like, crap. And he was just too drunk to even like just snap out of it. And I saw them talking afterwards, and they're yelling at each other, and I'm going, holy smokes, if I just picked a different name. But anyhow, called him out on it, and he was foolish enough to admit it, and there you have it.
And there you go. Now it's on your resume.
Yeah.
All right, next headline. A trick Brian created was performed in outer space.
Da-da-da-da. It's true. The change cap was used in outer space. I don't know what else to say except for this. There was a magic show in space, and the change cap was the first trick that this guy did.
Do you know who it was?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's Richard. I can't remember his last name, but that wealthy magician that went up with the Russians. He did a bunch of stuff. He did a lot of really cool stuff.
Oh, wow.
He did the change cap was the first trick. Yeah, one of the cool things he did is he made a ball not levitate, which in outer space is really cool, right? So he had like a tennis ball or something that was floating, and you're like, and everything floats up in there. But then he snapped his fingers and it just fell to the ground, and you're like, oh wow, that's actually kind of cool.
That's actually a really good trick.
Yeah, it's clever. He's a smart dude. It was super clever.
All right, next headline. Brian had a pet kangaroo that he used in his school assembly shows, Jump Into Reading, for a year.
Yeah, you can't keep a kangaroo for much longer than a year because they get pretty big.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
No, I never had a kangaroo. I didn't, but I knew a guy that did, so that's where I came up with that. He did. He had and he'd come over, and so we had a kangaroo in our house. He'd bring it over, and it'd bounce around the house, and there's a lot of red tape that you have to, or hoops that you have to jump through to get a kangaroo. But it was great. It was a really cool thing. But you can have them for a year on a special permit, and then they get too big and you need to send them back to wherever. I don't know. Yeah,
we had a guy here in Southern California that he would do an animal show. The big finale of his animal shows, he would have a joey, a small kangaroo, jump through the audience, actually jump down the aisles. And suddenly I didn't see him anymore.
Yeah, that's the
line. I don't exactly know what happened.
Yeah, I don't recommend. I mean, I don't encourage people to do anything with doves, let alone a kangaroo. And he would tell you the same thing. He only did that for 1 year for a reason.
All right, next headline. Brian won a talent show contest with a 45-minute act on a cruise ship.
I did. That's true. It's a fact. It's just they promoted, hey, talent show. You can win some silly prizes, and no one else entered except for me. I was prepared to do a little 3-minute act, and they said, well, we're going to cancel it because no one else entered. And I said, well, I can actually do a whole show if you want. And they said, oh, that would be great because it's already people will come to watch the talent show. And sure enough, they probably had about 400 or 500 people come to watch the talent show.
And so you basically did a cruise ship show.
That's the only cruise ship show I've ever done, but you can guess I put that on my bio. And they gave me a ton of amazing stuff. It was wonderful, and it was actually a really good learning experience because it is a different crowd, and that put the final nail in that of like, I don't want to be stuck on the ocean doing cruise ships all the time. But I loved doing theme parks and fairs and things like that. But, for me, working with drunks, as you know from the previous story, I don't do well with the crowd that's not super sober.
Well, the cruise ship is an interesting market too. I mean, you talked about a little bit of it earlier, but I interviewed Craig Diamond, who has been on a cruise ship longer than any other entertainer in the world. And he said when he first got hired to do a cruise ship, he was hired for a 2-week stint or a 3-week stint. And here it is 30 years later.
No, it was the best advice I've ever gotten because at the time I really didn't know. And but now I've talked to several people that have gone on cruises, and that's great if that's what you want to do, but it doesn't further your career, right? So if you're wanting, I'm a firm believer of beginning with the end in mind and going, this is great right now, but what do you want to be doing in 5 years? What do you want to be doing in 10 years? And that's back to Discover Magic. A lot of these guys like Joe Romano, he joined Discover Magic because he goes, in 5-10 years, I'm going to start not doing school assembly shows. And what am I going to be doing then? And so he's leveraging what he's doing now to lay a foundation for the future. And he's one that's killing it.
All right, next one. Brian's son's given name on his birth certificate was Small Magical Horses III. It's now Daniel.
So what do you think, John? What's your guess?
I think, let's see. Well, I'm reading the last one too, because I'm kind of cheating. I think that's not true.
Yeah, how could that be true, right? But who makes that up?
Is that true?
It's totally true. Yeah. So my son Daniel, he was adopted. His birth parents were huge fans of My Little Pony. And it's funny because when we tell people that, they assume that we must have adopted him from like a Native American tribe or something.
Yeah.
But no, they're just fans of My Little Pony. And then the nurse said you can put whatever you want on the birth certificate because it doesn't matter. The adopted couple will change it. She left out the important part: in 6 months they will change it. So in the state of Utah, you can't change the birth certificate for the first 6 months. His name was legally Small Magical Horses III for 6 months. And
wait, even back then, did you call him Daniel or did you call him like?
So we called him Daniel. I mean, he's a baby. We literally took him home from the delivery room. So we always called him Daniel, but other people would call him Small. And at the doctor's office, they would call him Small because that was his legal name. Beyond that, we called him Daniel. But yeah, his first name was Small. I don't know at what age we're going to tell him that. So I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast.
He might. How old is he now?
He's 5 right now. So
5 now. He probably won't listen to this yet. This will be boring stuff for him.
Yeah. He hears enough of me.
All right, last one. Brian was a contestant on Let's Make a Deal and won a sailboat, but they never aired the episode, so he never got the sailboat.
Yeah, did you know that if you don't air the episode, they don't have to give you the prizes?
I really didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true because I made that one up.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like such a great lie, though. Like, so that's my go-to. I love the game Two Truths and a Lie, and that's my go-to lie because no one would. You go, oh, well, that totally is believable. Like,
it kind of makes sense, you know?
Right? You go, oh yeah, what a racket. They don't give you your prize unless it airs. But no, I was on Let's Make a Deal, but they didn't pull me up. I didn't get to play.
I always picture, whenever I hear Let's Make a Deal, I always picture, the people who don't win anything, they always get a lifetime supply of rice-a-roni.
Right.
So I always picture you opening your front door and you're looking out and there's like 800 boxes of rice-a-roni on your doorstep.
Right. That's what I wanted. No lie. I'm like, I want one of those consolation prizes just because I want to learn what that's about. Like, does it all come at once?
Yeah.
You get a box every month Yeah.
All right. So that was Factor Something John just made up. Actually, that was Factor Something Brian just made up.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was Fact. Or something John just made up.
All right, we're going to go into some fan questions. You want some fan questions?
Yeah, I'm curious where these fans came from, so this will be great.
All right, here we go.
How do you find your fans? Wait, I really want to know this. Where?
Every time I interview somebody new, I put on my Facebook page that you can ask questions of my guests. And I will ask them those questions. So then they list their questions, and then I ask you if they're good questions.
And people asked questions. This is great.
People do ask questions. So it's a way of me kind of connecting with my listeners. Yeah.
All right. I'm excited to see who these fans are. Let's do this.
Here we go. Rob Balchunas, a.k.a. Rob the Balloon Guy, asks, how do you know when it's time to move on from a project?
Oh, wow. That is a good question. You probably should have given me these questions beforehand so I could have thought about it a little bit.
Well, you kind of approached this a little bit, jumping from creative magic to discover magic.
I think it really boils down to what motivates you. So I feel like for me, if I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to quote unquote work, then I'm working on the right things. And so I'm incredibly driven to create and build and design. And for me that, creating a company, creating a customer base, creating an experience, whatever it is, I enjoy that process. And if I find myself not thinking about it, not excited about it, then I'm on the wrong path. If I wake up, I'm excited to do even the hard things, then I'm working on the right thing.
Rob also asks, did you get me something?
Yeah. So do you know what he's talking about there?
I have to explain exactly what this is. Did you create this, by the way?
So I created it with John Reed, which you should have him as a guest if you haven't yet.
Okay. I went to a John Reed seminar one time, and he sold these. What do you call it? Acrylic.
It's a silicone bake form.
Okay, it's silicone bake form. Looks like it's like a pie tin, but it's silicone, and it has the word something. So one year for Christmas, I poured chocolate into those and gave them to all my relatives. And the card said, "Here's something for you for Christmas." So it's the word something, and for me, it was made out of chocolate. I know that's not an original idea. My idea was not an original idea. Your idea was an original idea.
No, but chocolate is one of the best ones. And so John and I put together a Kickstarter. So I love Kickstarters. And that goes back to the other question of, you can always kind of put it out there and see if you've got a fan base around you as well. And that's the beauty of Kickstarters. You can see, do people like this idea or not? And how much of a fan base do you have for it before you even get started? And once you commit to it, that pushes you along as well. So we threw it out there on Kickstarter. Hey, what if we created a cookie cutter or a bake form of the word something? So you could do somethings in your punch, something for breakfast, something to help you feel better, something to wish you best luck. And so it came with a cookbook with 365 ideas and recipes. And the whole thing was crowdsourced. People sent in pictures and ideas. And so, something, John Reed still has those and sells those. I have my own personal box that I give away for it's a great gift. And you can both give them the cookbook and mold as the gift, and that's the gift that keeps on giving, or you get one and do what you did and give them away as, in our neighborhood at Christmas time, everyone gives their neighbors something. And so it was great to one year. We literally gave them all something. That was fun.
Gosh, I wonder, what if I should do that again this year? I haven't done that in a few years now.
Yeah, they've all forgotten about it. You can get another laugh out of it.
Christmas is coming right around the corner.
Well, the thing is, it's not super expensive. You pour some chocolate in. It's not a big deal, but it doesn't look like you cheaped out, right? It's clever. Yeah. It's fun. And so
it is. It's clever and it's fun. Next fan question. Paul Spring, who a spectacular children's entertainer out of North Carolina and one of your Discover Magic presenters, asks, what is the most creative and hard to pull off thing that you've put together for Discover Magic conference attendees?
Oh, wow. Well, he's diving into a whole nother realm. So I love Paul. What a great guy. He and he didn't get to come to the last conference, so I'm sure he's wanting to know what we did. So we do an annual conference. We do these training conferences, and rule number one at Discover Magic is have fun. That's what we teach the kids, have fun. And so we try to do crazy things. We had a contest where we explode watermelons with a rubber band. I thought this would be a great idea when I had the idea during the summer, and then I realized we're going to be doing the conference in November. And I'm going to have to somehow I had to special order watermelons. I talked to the produce manager at a grocery store, and then I have to get the 4 watermelons from Utah to Vegas and doing all this. And I literally, no lie, I lost sleep stressing about getting these watermelons, and are they going to rot? Like, how do you get watermelons in November? Well, then dang it, if I didn't, I'm in Vegas 2 days before the conference at Costco picking up candy, and there's a bin of watermelons there. And I'm like, what the heck? I have stressed and worked and crazy stuff, but we done some wild things. One of the coolest things was this year we did a magic trick on all the attendees, and it took a lot of work, and no one knows how we did it. But when you showed up at the conference, we gave you a free choice. You got to pick one of 3 destinations. You can go to the moon, you can go to the jungle, or you can go to the ocean. Mm-hmm. And then their name badge, they were holding their name badge the entire time. It had a treasure map on it. And unbeknownst to them, in super fine print in the X, it said, you will pick the jungle, you will pick the ocean. And it's a callback to one of the tricks we do in our curriculum, but we brought it to life and made it in the real thing, it's a multiple outs routine for magicians, but we did a completely different method here that we're really proud of, and it took a lot of work and we lost a lot of sleep, but we pride ourselves on surprises and doing crazy things. One year we taped pop rocks under everyone's chair and had a moment of silence, and everyone found their pop rocks, and we just listened to the 50 people.
Oh, that's cool.
With pop rocks in their mouth, just crazy stuff. So yeah, I don't know what the craziest thing is, but the thing that was the hardest was that darn watermelon thing.
All right. The last question. Paul also asks, has there ever been a business that you failed at, and what would you do differently?
Oh, man, it's true. There's been a couple. I don't think you have successes without failures. Most people don't admit them. But one of my biggest regrets is Teach by Magic was a company that kind of, if you go to teachbymagic.com, it'll just send you to Discover Magic. And I pretend that one led into the other. And they kind of did. Michael Ammar approached me because of Teach by Magic. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building Teach by Magic, and it was built on the idea of it's all digital. One of my things I didn't like about Creative Magic was shipping things and things getting lost in the mail, and something getting broken or whatever it might be. Yeah. Just the having to ship stuff and it having to be there on a certain day, and I went, man, if we just sell digital content, then I can eliminate my least favorite thing. And that's how I've approached a lot of my businesses. That's where the shadow tent was. What can I eliminate of the things I don't like and focus on the things I do like? It seems pretty simple, but it actually has served me well. How do I eliminate the things I don't? I love creating magic. I don't like shipping magic. So I created Teach by Magic, where I could come up with tricks, but you just download stuff. We filmed over 500 videos for school teachers to use in the classroom. And we paid several $100s a month to host those videos so that we wouldn't look cheap by putting them on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then we charged teachers money to access these. We had a fair amount of success. We went to a lot of school conferences, and it was well received. They were basically simple object lessons that kids would be engaged with and teachers could learn. Well, where I missed the mark was I was worried about magicians saying, hey, you're giving away magic. Otherwise, it would have been a free site, but I made it a paid site. Teachers don't have any money, and so they're having to go to their schools to get grants and things, and there's just too many barriers on it all. And if it had just been a free site with videos on YouTube, I would have cut my costs way down because I'm not paying to serve these videos. They're just hosted on YouTube, and I would have been way ahead of the game because this was 2008, 2009. And now you look at these simple magic videos that have millions and millions of views,
and they're making money with the views.
Right. Meanwhile, mine are just all under lock and key. And so, but I don't have any regrets because I learned a lot through that process. But if I could go back in time and whisper something in my ear, I'd say, hey, don't worry about the magic. Because in the end, the magicians actually came back to me and said, how come you're charging money for these tricks that can be found in any library book? And I'm like, what the heck? I did this for you guys. So you just never know. But I'm grateful for it. I absolutely wouldn't change it. As far as, if you said you could not do it and save all that money, I wouldn't do it. But if I could go back and do it a different way, I would just put everything on YouTube. And I still, every year goes by, people say, well, it's not too late to just put them all on YouTube. And I go, yeah, I probably should. But then I go, I missed the boat. And then the next year it grows even bigger and go, I probably should. But now I've missed the boat. And I probably should in 2020, but I kind of feel like I missed the boat.
Yeah, and the boat gets further and further away every year.
Right, exactly.
Oh, man. I'm going to ask you for some advice for the beginner or the pro. And that means performing, business, whatever you'd like.
So the biggest advice goes back to our rule number one of have fun. If you enjoy what you're doing, then you'll do it well. And so if there's parts of what you're doing that you don't like, then take them away. There's a principle of, if you've ever read the book 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, there's this principle of doing less, right? So when Little Caesars decided to do hot and ready pizzas, they said, we're just doing pepperoni and cheese, right? And by eliminating a bunch of things, they actually increased their business. And it's so contrary to these restaurants go, oh, maybe we'll make more money if we add fried chicken. Maybe we'll make more money if we do this. And the book points out that it's not that Starbucks is not successful because of what they're doing now. Starbucks is successful because of what they did when they started. Don't copy these successful big companies now, because now they're making all the big mistakes they can afford to make because they have a ton of money. But it's the things they did when they were small that made them successful. And generally it's because you have some niche. Starbucks had a niche. Little Caesars saved their company by having a niche, right?
All right, give me one recommended book and we'll get you out of here.
Okay, so this is by far my favorite book. It's called The Happiness Advantage. Have you ever heard of The Happiness Advantage?
No.
Okay, please do me a favor and read it. It will change your life. It's Sean Aker. He's got another book as well. Actually, I think he has two books, but the Beyond Happiness. But The Happiness Advantage, in a nutshell, teaches you that the logic of success makes you happy is wrong. That happiness makes you successful. So I'll say that again. So people always say, if I were more successful, I'd be happier. And he says, no, if you were happier, you'd be more successful. And then he goes into this like, well, that's great for happy people, but I'm not happy. And he proves that happiness can be, aside from chemical imbalances and depression, which he acknowledges is a very real thing and should be addressed. But your average person can choose to be happier, and he gives you techniques and tactics. But it's just such a great read. There's so much amazing research. He's a researcher, and the studies are just fascinating. These projects they do to prove that happiness makes you successful.
Excellent. I'll put that right on my website so someone can click on it and get it. In fact, I'm probably going to do that right after this, after I set that up.
It's so good. It's so good.
Well, thanks, Brian, for doing my show. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you. I hope it was useful. And if there's anything that you or anyone else wants to talk about further, I love talking business. I love startups, and I like helping people where I can. Happy to address any questions. And if it's about starting a magic company to sell magic tricks, the answer is don't do it.
Oh, and one last thing before I let you go. What is the website they will go to take a look at Discover Magic, or maybe even become a presenter at some point in time?
Yeah, discovermagic.com. On that site, there's a contact us page. If you fill that out, you will get directly to me. And so you can reach out there. There's a tab at the bottom of becoming a presenter, and there's some information. But definitely reach out to me if you're remotely interested. I'd love to answer some questions and see if it's a good fit for you.
And thanks to all my variety artists. If you found this podcast valuable, spread the word. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Just go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Search The Variety Artist with John Abrams, and you can subscribe there. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.